A Roman soldier's most valuable reward was not a chest of gold, but a simple piece of land. This is the untold story of the currency of loyalty, a hidden economy that built and sustained ancient empires. By the end, you will understand the true price of a soldier's service and how it shaped history. We will explore why a Spartan warrior might scorn a paycheck and what a Germanic fighter truly sought on the battlefield. What do you believe is the most powerful reward for someone's lifelong dedication? For a Spartan hoplite, the clink of a coin was a hollow sound. His value, his very identity, was forged in the communal fires of the barracks, not measured out in precious metal. This reveals a profound truth about the ancient world, one that reshapes our entire understanding of payment. Compensation was never a simple transaction. It was a complex package, a carefully balanced exchange of service for a blend of rewards that were immediate and eternal, tangible and deeply psychological. The Roman historian Tacitus observed this directly among the Germanic tribes, noting that their warriors fought with ferocious loyalty, not for a wage, but for the glory of their chieftain. This was not a lack of compensation. It was a different economy altogether, one where the currency was honor. So, what exactly was in this loyalty package? We can break it down into layers. The most basic layer was the material one, the immediate sustenance of food, shelter, and a share of plunder. Yet this was merely the foundation. Built directly upon it was the social layer, the promise of esteem, and a respected place within the brotherhood of warriors. Your standing was your wealth. But the most powerful component, the one that secured a lifetime of service, was the promise of future security. This was the ultimate long-term incentive, the guarantee that your loyalty would be repaid with land, with status, and with a legacy that would care for your family long after your fighting days were over. This system created bonds of mutual obligation that were far stronger than any temporary contract. It wove the soldier's fate directly into the fabric of the state, making his personal success inseparable from its own. To understand the specific treasures a soldier sought, we must first appreciate this intricate economy of the spirit. That old soldier from Gaul, now walking his own field in Italy, held a treasure far greater than a sack of gold. This was the grant of land, the foundational pillar of the loyalty economy. For a veteran of Caesar's legions, this was not merely a pension, it was a complete transformation. In an instant, he shifted from a transient fighter, moving from camp to camp, to a settled landowner with a permanent stake in the empire's future. His personal stability and the empire's stability became one and the same. These Roman military colonies, known as coloniae, were masterstrokes of policy. They were not random clusters of farms. They were carefully planned settlements, strategically placed in newly conquered or restless territories. Each colonia was a permanent garrison of loyal Roman citizens, a living, breathing extension of Roman power and culture. The land itself became a tool for Romanization, ensuring that the local landscape was gradually reshaped by the very soldiers who had helped conquer it. The reward was multifaceted. It provided immediate economic security, a means to support a family after a lifetime of campaigning. It bestowed immense social status, elevating the soldier to the respected class of landowner. And most powerfully, it created a hereditary legacy. This farm was not just for him, it was for his children and his children's children, binding his lineage to Rome for generations. The promise of this future, of a home and a name, was what kept legions cohesive and disciplined through 25 years of brutal campaigns. It was a tangible connection to the soil, a different kind of wealth that could be passed down. But this deep-rooted security was only one part of the story. What about the social rewards that came with it, the honors that could elevate a soldier's name in the here and now? That bronze diploma was far more than a certificate of service. In the hands of a retired legionary, it was a key to a new life. This small, inscribed tablet granted him the coveted honesta missio, an honorable discharge, and with it came rights and privileges that solidified his place in Roman society. He was now exempt from certain taxes and, crucially, had the legal right to marry, allowing him to establish a legitimate family and pass on his hard-earned status. This was the ultimate social safety net, transforming him from a soldier of the state into a respected pillar of his community. But the rewards for proven loyalty extended far beyond the end of service. Within the legions themselves, a sophisticated system of honors created a visible career path. Soldiers with specialized skills, from engineers to surveyors, could achieve the rank of immunes. This title lifted them from the grueling manual labor of the common soldier, offering better pay and a more prestigious position. It was a powerful incentive to master a trade, proving that intellect and skill were valued alongside brute strength. Then there were the ultimate accolades, the military crowns. The Corona Civica, awarded to a soldier who saved the life of a comrade in battle, was one of the highest honors imaginable. Wearing that wreath of oak leaves was a public declaration of valor that everyone understood. This was a social currency that pure wealth could never purchase. It commanded immediate respect, opened doors, and etched the soldier's name into the collective memory of his unit. This relentless pursuit of honor, from a simple diploma to a legendary crown, forged a professional army with profound institutional loyalty. A soldier knew that his merit would be seen and rewarded, not just with coin, but with lasting prestige. Yet this drive for personal glory was balanced by a force even more powerful, the unbreakable bonds of the men standing beside him. The roar of a victorious army sacking a city was for many the sound of payment being collected. This was the power of plunder, the most immediate and visceral form of compensation in the ancient world. While it appeared to be pure chaos, the distribution of spoils was often a calculated tool in the hands of brilliant commanders. Alexander the Great was a master of this, using the promise of loot to fuel his army's relentless march across continents. He understood that granting his soldiers the right to plunder a conquered city was the ultimate reward for their aggressive initiative and a powerful boost to morale. Beyond the personal grabbing of gold and jewels, there was a more systematic and grimly efficient form of wealth generation: the sale of captured populations into slavery. This was a standard, if brutal, practice of ancient warfare, and the proceeds from these sales generated immense, centralized wealth that could be distributed among the entire army, from the lowest foot soldier to the highest officer. For a common soldier, a single successful campaign could yield precious artifacts, finely crafted weapons, or luxury goods he would otherwise never possess in his entire lifetime. A single ornate vase or a bolt of fine silk could instantly elevate his economic standing back home, transforming him from a simple farmer into a man of means. This system created a direct and powerful link between military success and personal enrichment, making every soldier a tangible stakeholder in the army's collective victory. The thrill of this instant wealth, the feel of treasure in your hands, was intoxicating, yet this allure was inherently unstable. A bad season or a single defeat could wipe out such gains. This raw, immediate incentive was always balanced, in the most successful empires, by the promise of the structured, long-term rewards we have already seen, the kind that built a future rather than just funding a celebration. This balance between the immediate thrill of spoils and the enduring promise of land and status reveals the true sophistication of the ancient loyalty economy. It makes you wonder, how did a soldier weigh the value of a sack of gold today against the promise of a farm in 10 years? This complex calculation brings us to the ultimate question, the one that truly unravels the mystery of how empires were built not just with gold, but with the far more powerful currency of human loyalty itself. For that Germanic auxiliary standing guard along a misty river, the promise of citizenship was a beacon shining across 25 long years of service. His loyalty was not just purchased with a daily wage or the occasional share of plunder. It was secured with a document that would change the entire trajectory of his bloodline. Upon his honest discharge, he and his sons would receive the coveted Roman citizenship. In an instant, he was transformed from an outsider, a peregrinus, into a full member of the most powerful civic body on earth. This was not merely a change in legal paperwork. It was the acquisition of a new identity, one that came with tangible and profound privileges. He now possessed the right to a legal Roman marriage, making his children legitimate Roman citizens from birth. He gained protection under Roman law, a formidable shield in a world where legal status dictated one's entire life. He could own property in a specific, legally protected way, and he could even stand for local political office, gaining a voice in his community. This was the ultimate social mobility. The Roman army, in its endless need for manpower, became one of the most powerful engines of integration the world has ever known. It systematically identified the most ambitious and capable young men from conquered territories and offered them a clear, if arduous, path to the highest echelon of society. A young man from a Germanic tribe or a North African village could, through disciplined service, earn a status that many born in Italy itself would never achieve. This policy was a stroke of political genius. It turned the empire's most formidable potential adversaries into its most committed defenders. Why would a Gaul rebel against Rome when his own future, and the future of his family, was inextricably linked to Rome's success? His 25 years of service were an investment in a new lineage, a conscious trade of his old tribal identity for the prestigious title of Roman. This reward was so potent because it was comprehensive. Citizenship was rarely granted alone. It was the crowning piece of a package that often included a grant of land and a cash payment, weaving together economic security with unparalleled social status. The value of this social currency, the right to call oneself Roman, was a treasure that no amount of plundered gold could ever equal. That document granting citizenship was a powerful promise for the future, but it was not the only promise a soldier needed. The long-term security of a land grant or a new legal identity had to be matched by a more immediate form of future assurance, the kind that ensured an old soldier would not end his days in poverty. This was the final, critical pillar of the loyalty economy, the promise of a pension. Imagine the profound sense of security felt by a Roman legionary who knew that after his 25 years of service, the state itself would guarantee his financial well-being. This was not a matter of chance or the personal generosity of a commander. It was a formal, institutional promise. The Emperor Augustus Caesar made this system official in the 1st century, establishing the Aerarium Militare, a dedicated military treasury. This fund, supported by specific taxes, was designed to provide cash pensions known as premia to veterans upon their honorable discharge. This transformed retirement from a hopeful gamble into a predictable, state-backed right. But even before such formal structures existed, the most successful commanders understood the power of this long-term care. A general like Gaius Marius, who reformed the Roman army, was known to use his vast personal wealth to provide for his loyal veterans. This practice created bonds of personal allegiance so powerful that soldiers often felt more loyalty to their commander than to the distant Roman Senate. They knew the man who led them into battle would also be the man who ensured they had a roof over their heads in their old age. This system of care even extended to those who paid the highest price for their service. Some ancient states made provisions for soldiers who were permanently disabled in battle, ensuring that a lost limb or a crippling injury did not mean a life of destitution for the veteran or his family. This forward-looking compassion was not just an act of charity, it was a brilliant strategic calculation, knowing that the state would care for you even if you were broken in its service, encouraged greater enlistment and fostered a willingness to take calculated risks on the battlefield. A soldier could fight with more courage if he knew that a wound would not spell the end for his family's future. This comprehensive approach to veteran care acknowledged the entirety of a soldier's sacrifice. It was the state's way of repaying a lifetime of service, a clear message that loyalty was a long-term investment with a guaranteed return. The assurance of a dignified retirement, free from the fear of starvation or neglect, was a crucial piece of the architectural blueprint for military loyalty. It complemented the immediate thrill of plunder and the enduring prestige of status, creating a complete package that addressed every stage of a warrior's life. This intricate economy, built on land, honor, and security, reveals the true depth of the ancient world's understanding of what truly motivates a human being to give their all. For a legionary in Julius Caesar's army, the most important man in the world was not a senator in a distant marble hall. It was the general standing before him, the man whose personal fortune and reputation were the true guarantors of his future. This was the beating heart of the Patronage System, a social engine that powered the ancient world. A commander like Caesar acted as a patronus, a patron, to his soldiers who were his clients. This was not a cold, professional relationship. It was a sacred, reciprocal bond of loyalty and protection, much like that between a powerful lord and his sworn followers. The general's duty extended far beyond giving orders on the battlefield. He paid signing bonuses from his own vast wealth. He personally advocated for his men to receive honors or land, and he ensured that the spoils of war were distributed fairly, often putting his own reputation on the line to secure their rewards. His personal charisma and perceived generosity were the bedrock of his army's morale. A soldier knew that his well-being and the well-being of his family depended directly on the success and integrity of his commander. This created a powerful two-way street. A general needed fiercely loyal troops to achieve the military glory that fueled his political career, and the troops needed a victorious and generous general to secure the pensions, land, and status they had been promised. This intensely personal dynamic could, and often did, create a dangerous fissure in the state's authority. When the interests of a powerful commander clashed with the commands of the Senate, the legions faced a profound choice. Would they follow the distant, abstract idea of Rome, or the man who had personally led them to victory, shared their hardships, and guaranteed their rewards? Time and again, the personal bond proved stronger. This is why Roman history is punctuated by civil wars where entire armies marched against the government, not for a political ideology, but for their patron. They were fighting for the man who held the key to their future, the man who had become, in their eyes, the very embodiment of their reward. This deep, personal loyalty, existing alongside the formal structures of pay and pension, reveals a crucial layer of motivation. It forces us to ask, where does true loyalty lie when the fate of an empire hangs in the balance? The loyalty that bound a Roman legionary to his general was a powerful force, yet it was forged in a very specific cultural furnace. When we look across the ancient world, we see different civilizations minting their own unique currencies of loyalty, each reflecting their deepest values. In the vast Persian Empire, the legendary immortals did not fight for land or citizenship. Their devotion was to the Shahanshah, the King of Kings, a figure who was not just a political leader but a representative of the divine god Ahura Mazda. Service to him was a sacred religious duty. The most valued rewards were not distant farms but prestigious positions within the royal court and the tangible evidence of the king's direct favor. This system was deeply embedded in Zoroastrian beliefs, where loyalty to the righteous king was a path to cosmic order. Far to the west, the Macedonian army of Philip and Alexander operated on a different principle entirely: the bond of companionship. The elite cavalry, the heteroi, were literally the king's companions. Their loyalty was secured through intimate proximity and a shared identity with their ruler. To ride and fight beside Alexander was the reward in itself, a mark of honor that created an almost familial bond among the high command. This was a loyalty built on personal charisma and shared ambition on an epic scale. Meanwhile, in the mead halls of Celtic and Germanic Europe, a warrior's allegiance was pledged to his chieftain in a deeply personal compact. This relationship, celebrated in epics like Beowulf, was cemented by the generous distribution of treasure, fine weapons, and rings. A lord's worth was measured by his generosity, and a warrior's status was proven by the gold he received from his leader's hand. This created a cycle of gift-giving and martial service that defined their heroic culture. On the other side of the world, the Han dynasty in China perfected a remarkably bureaucratic and merit-based system. Soldiers could earn promotions through a complex hierarchy of ranks, with each step up bringing tangible rewards like increased salaries, official honors, and grants of land for their families back home. This was a state-run engine of social mobility, designed to produce a professional and highly motivated military class. From the divine king to the personal chieftain, from the king's companion to the state bureaucrat, every major civilization confronted the same fundamental problem: how to motivate men to fight and die. Each one crafted a distinct loyalty currency from the materials of its own culture, religion, and social structure. This universal solution, tailored in so many different ways, reveals a profound truth about human motivation and the intricate bonds that build empires. A general's reputation was his most fragile and valuable possession. This was the unwritten psychological contract, a silent agreement built not on parchment but on the consistent delivery of promises. For a soldier shivering through a winter march or staring down an enemy line, the most powerful weapon in his commander's arsenal was trust. The promise of a farm in Italy, of Roman citizenship, or even a fair share of the next city's plunder, these were not just future rewards. They were psychological anchors, tangible visions of a better life that made the present misery endurable. This forward-looking faith transformed the brutal reality of military service. It was no longer just a dangerous job. It became a long-term investment in one's own destiny, a reason to endure the grueling marches, the poor rations, and the terror of battle with patience and discipline. An army that truly believed its sacrifices would be honored fought with a different kind of resolve. Their cohesion was stronger, their loyalty deeper, because they were fighting for a future they could actually see. This intangible force of trust acted as a true multiplier on the battlefield, turning abstract promises into concrete courage. But this entire intricate system, built on land, honor, and security, relied entirely on this one fragile element. The glue holding the ancient loyalty economy together was not gold but a commander's word, and when that word was broken, the entire structure could collapse in an instant. A full stomach was a form of currency. While we focus on grand rewards like land and citizenship, the most immediate and constant payment a soldier received was the army's unwavering logistical support. Imagine the morale of a legionary on the German frontier, miles from civilization when the supply wagons arrived. They brought not just rations but a powerful message: he is not forgotten. The daily grain ration, the bacon, and the sour wine known as posca were far more than calories. They were the fuel of empire, a tangible promise that the vast machinery of Rome was working to keep him alive and fighting. This was a continuous, in-kind salary delivered directly to his stomach, but this support system extended far beyond food. Every Roman soldier carried the knowledge that wherever he marched, his unit would stop to construct a fortified camp, a castra. This was not a temporary bivouac. It was a meticulously planned miniature city, complete with straight streets, defensive walls, and standardized barracks. Within its safe perimeter, he would find a bathhouse to wash away the grime of the march, and most importantly, a military hospital, a valetudinarium. Access to trained military doctors who could set broken bones, perform surgeries, and treat wounds with clean bandages was a benefit that most civilians of the era could never afford. For a soldier, this medical care was not a luxury. It was a direct and dramatic increase in his odds of surviving the next battle. This comprehensive system of care, from the boots on his feet to the surgeon tending his wound, demonstrated the state's profound investment in its human assets. It fostered a powerful, unspoken feeling. The soldier felt valued. He was not a disposable tool, but a vital component of the machine, worthy of protection and maintenance. Without this bedrock of reliable food, shelter, and medicine, all the promises of future land and citizenship would have rung hollow. A soldier cannot dream of a farm in Italy if he is starving or dying of infection in Gaul. This day-to-day sustenance built the foundational trust that made the grand, long-term rewards psychologically believable. It was the quiet, constant proof that the state would keep its word. The spiritual dimension of a soldier's reward was as real as the land he hoped to farm. For a legionary, the gleaming eagle standard at the head of his column was not merely a military symbol. It was a sacred object, a direct conduit to the gods Jupiter and Mars, whose favor could decide the fate of a battle. Before any engagement, the commanding general would perform public sacrifices, reading the entrails of animals for divine signs. A positive omen was more than a superstition. It was a form of spiritual payment, a message from the gods that they fought on the side of righteousness. This shared belief created an unshakable cohesion. Soldiers were not just fighting for a commander or for plunder. They were fighting for a divine mandate, convinced that their collective piety was the key to victory. A general seen as particularly blessed by the gods, like Alexander the Great after his pilgrimage to the Oracle of Siwa, could inspire a fanatical devotion. His troops believed they were instruments of a cosmic will, their personal sacrifices part of a grand, holy narrative. The rewards for such faith were often made spectacularly visible. After a great victory, a portion of the captured treasure was frequently dedicated to the gods, used to build magnificent temples or erect triumphal monuments. This was a spiritual dividend for the entire army, a public declaration that their blood and sweat had pleased the heavens and enriched their sacred landscape. But for some warriors, the ultimate spiritual reward lay beyond this life. In Norse tradition, a glorious death in battle promised an eternity in Valhalla, the great hall of the god Odin. This belief fundamentally transformed the psychology of combat. The fear of death was not erased, but it was counterbalanced by the promise of an eternal feast among heroes. This was the most profound loyalty currency imaginable. one that paid out not in this world but in the next. It made the risk of annihilation not a terrifying end, but a potential promotion to a higher state of being. This spiritual framework infused the grim business of war with transcendent meaning, offering a form of payment that no enemy could ever plunder and no state could ever tax. It answered the deepest human question of what comes after, turning mortal soldiers into potential immortals. The legionary who could build a bridge under fire possessed a skill more valuable than any single piece of plunder. His military service was a brutal, all-encompassing education, a continuous investment in his own human capital that paid dividends for a lifetime. The Roman army was, in effect, the ancient world's most demanding vocational school. A recruit did not simply learn to march and fight. He was drilled daily in the construction of entire fortified camps, gaining practical experience in surveying, carpentry, and earthworks. He learned to maintain and repair his own weapons and armor, mastering the basics of blacksmithing and leatherwork. Specialists known as immunes were trained as engineers, architects, and even medical orderlies, their value to the unit earning them better pay and exemption from menial labor. This relentless training transformed an ordinary farmer into a multi-skilled professional. The discipline required to follow complex commands and the organizational ability to work as part of a massive, coordinated machine were themselves priceless assets. When a veteran finally received his honoris missio after 25 years, he did not just retire with a plot of land and a pension. He walked away with a portable toolkit of highly marketable skills. He could now work as a foreman on a construction project, a manager for a wealthy landowner, or even start his own smithy or carpentry shop. The army had systematically increased his worth, making him a more self-sufficient and prosperous member of society. This long-term investment created a profound and reciprocal loyalty. The state demonstrated that it was not just using up its soldiers, but was actively building them up. A soldier knew that every day of grueling training was not just for Rome's benefit, but for his own future. This created a powerful sense of partnership. The army offered a path to self-improvement that was unavailable to most civilians, a form of payment that never stopped giving. How do you measure the value of a skill that can feed a family for generations? This focus on personal development forged a soldier who was not only effective in battle, but also deeply invested in the system that made him who he was. From the perspective of an ancient treasurer, a chest of gold coins was a finite and dangerously liquid asset. Paying an entire army in precious metal year after year could drain a treasury faster than any military defeat. This is where the genius of the loyalty economy truly shone, not as a matter of generosity, but as a matter of brilliant, sustainable finance. Granting a veteran a plot of land on a restless frontier was a masterstroke of cost-effectiveness. The state was not giving away a precious resource, it was strategically redeploying one. That land was often recently conquered, its previous inhabitants displaced or subdued. By settling a retired legionary there, Rome achieved multiple objectives with a single, non-monetary transaction. It secured a volatile border with a permanent garrison of loyal, battle-hardened men. It began the process of Romanization, transforming foreign soil into a cultural and agricultural extension of the empire, and it provided for the veteran's retirement without a massive, ongoing cash drain from the central treasury. The soldier, in essence, was paid with the very security he was tasked to provide, building his future while simultaneously building the empire's future. This system also provided immense flexibility for managing the state's cash flow. The most expensive promises, the grants of land and the large pension payments, were deferred. They were costs that came due only after 25 years of service, or at the successful conclusion of a campaign. This allowed a state to raise and maintain a massive army today, funding its immediate needs with taxes and plunder, while pushing the largest payouts far into the future. A triumphant campaign, like those of Alexander, would actually finance its own rewards through the immense spoils of victory. The captured gold from a Persian palace could directly fund the veteran settlements, creating a self-perpetuating engine of expansion. Then there was the ultimate low-cost, high-reward incentive, the grant of citizenship. For the treasury, this remarkable privilege cost absolutely nothing in direct monetary terms. There was no minting of special coins, no allocation of land, no immediate payout. Yet the return on this investment was profound. By turning a foreign auxiliary into a Roman citizen, the state gained a new taxpayer for life along with all his descendants. It gained a loyal adherent who would now see the empire's stability as his own. This practice systematically expanded the economic and political base of the entire state, transforming potential enemies into productive, tax-paying citizens. This created a powerful virtuous cycle that fueled the growth of empires. A loyal and motivated army conquered new territories. Those territories provided the land and wealth needed to reward the army. Those rewards, in turn, reinforced the army's loyalty, ensuring it would fight to conquer even more. The system was a perfect self-funding loop. The soldier's personal dream of a secure future was, in reality, the very mechanism that powered the empire's relentless expansion. What appeared to be a reward for past service was in fact the fuel for future conquests. A young man from the Italian countryside enlists, clutching his first payment, the viaticum. This small sum is his introduction to a system of rewards far more complex than a simple salary. His regular stipendium, paid in coin, forms the steady financial baseline of his life, but it is merely the canvas upon which a masterpiece of motivation is painted. He quickly learns that his true wealth accumulates in layers. There is the immediate thrill of plunder, the shared loot from a successful siege that promises a sudden, tangible windfall. But his eyes are set on a more distant horizon, on the three promises that secure his long-term loyalty. The first is the grant of land, a farm of his own upon retirement, transforming him from a soldier of the empire into a permanent stakeholder within it. The second is the coveted citizenship for any children born after his honorable discharge, a legacy that elevates his entire bloodline. The third is the premia, the cash pension guaranteed by the military treasury, ensuring his old age is spent in security, not poverty. These are not separate incentives but interlocking parts of a single, powerful assurance: his future is guaranteed. This comprehensive package is woven together by bonds of a different kind. His daily life is governed by the unwavering authority of his centurion, a seasoned veteran who leads from the front and personally embodies the army's discipline. His broader allegiance is to his general, a patron whose personal fortune and reputation are the engine that turns these imperial promises into reality. And flowing through it all is a profound pride in his legion, symbolized by the sacred eagle standard he would die to protect. This spiritual allegiance is reinforced by the most practical care imaginable. He marches on roads built by his own comrades, eats rations delivered by a vast logistical network, and sleeps securely in a fortified camp constructed each night. If he falls ill or is wounded, he is treated in a military hospital by trained doctors, a level of medical care most civilians will never know. His entire 25-year service is a continuous education, transforming him from a simple farmer into a disciplined engineer, a carpenter, and a manager. The Roman state did not just pay this soldier, it invested in him comprehensively, body, mind, and spirit. It understood that loyalty is not purchased with a single coin, but cultivated through a web of mutual obligation and care. This integrated model, perfected over centuries, created a fighting force whose cohesion and endurance were unmatched. The legionary's personal dream of a better life became the very foundation upon which a vast empire stood for hundreds of years. A Roman legionary's future was secured by a fixed plot of land, but for a Mongol warrior on the open steppe, such a reward would have been meaningless. His world was defined by movement, by the horizon, and by the herds that were his true wealth. The loyalty binding a warrior to Genghis Khan was not a contract for future real estate, but a visceral bond of shared identity and a brilliantly simple promise: you will receive exactly what you earn. The Mongol system was a pure meritocracy, ruthless in its fairness. A young man who began his life as a simple herdsman could, through sheer ability and courage on the battlefield, rise to command 10,000 men. There were no hereditary titles blocking his path, no privileged class born to officer status. His promotion was based on a single, undeniable currency: proven performance. This created an army where talent was aggressively identified and rewarded, fostering a fierce, competitive loyalty to the system itself. The immediate payoff for this service was the most equitable distribution of plunder the ancient world had ever seen. After a victory, the spoils were collected and divided with meticulous precision. Every warrior, from the lowest archer to Genghis Khan himself, received a share strictly proportional to his contribution to the fight. This was not a gift from a generous leader, it was a right, a direct reflection of one's own worth. The Khan himself was subject to this same rule, reinforcing the idea that they were all partners in a shared enterprise. For a nomadic people, the traditional rewards of settled empires held no value. A Mongol fighter did not dream of a farm, he dreamed of more horses, larger herds of sheep and goats, and the rights to the best seasonal grazing land. These were the foundations of his wealth and social standing. Loyalty to a successful leader directly translated into more livestock, which meant greater security for his family and a higher position within the ever-shifting tribal hierarchy. His personal prosperity was inextricably linked to the success of the entire Mongol nation. Uniting this practical system was a powerful spiritual belief. The Mongols worshipped the eternal blue sky, Tengri, who they believed had granted a divine mandate to Genghis Khan to unite the world. Conquest was not merely a political or economic act, it was a sacred duty. This shared cosmic purpose fused the individual ambitions of thousands of warriors into a single, unstoppable force. They fought not just for plunder or promotion, but as instruments of a heavenly will. Here was a loyalty economy perfectly adapted to its environment, proving that the currency of a soldier's devotion could be as fluid and powerful as the wind across the plains. A soldier's loyalty could vanish as quickly as the value of a debased silver coin. The entire intricate economy of trust, built on promises of land and honor, was terrifyingly fragile. Its collapse was never quiet. It erupted in the roar of a mutiny, a sound that echoed through Roman history with chilling regularity. Following the death of Augustus, the very founder of the military treasury, legions on the German frontier erupted in open rebellion. This was not a disorganized riot. It was a calculated, collective action by professional soldiers who knew exactly what they were owed. They presented a list of demands not for more, but for what was already promised: back pay, the land grants they had fought for, and the pensions that guaranteed their future. They were, in effect, calling in a debt. The state had broken its side of the unwritten contract, and their loyalty was immediately withdrawn. This breakdown could be just as devastating when it was subtle. When a commander like Mark Antony faced a cash shortage, he ordered the silver in the denarius coin to be diluted with cheaper metals. To a soldier, the coin felt the same in his hand, but its real value had plummeted. He could no longer buy as much bread or wine for his family. This silent theft of his purchasing power was a profound betrayal. It eroded the very foundation of trust, proving that the state could not be relied upon to honor its most basic financial commitments. As the Roman Empire aged, these failures became chronic. The vast machine began to sputter, and the steady flow of reliable pay and secure retirement dried up. What was the result? Professional soldiers whose fathers and grandfathers had served Rome with unwavering faith began to shift their allegiance. Their loyalty went to the general who could pay them today, not to an abstract empire that failed to deliver on its tomorrows. This mercenary spirit fueled endless civil wars as armies fought for the man with the fullest purse. In its final centuries, a desperate Rome came to rely not on its own citizens, but on foreign foederati, entire tribes hired as mercenaries to defend the frontiers. These warriors had no ancestral connection to Rome, no dream of a farm in Italy, no belief in the sacred eagle standard. They fought for a wage, and when that wage was late or a better offer came from the other side of the border, their loyalty evaporated. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a single military defeat. It was the slow-motion collapse of a loyalty economy that had been neglected for generations. The legions did not disappear, they simply ceased to be Roman in spirit. These historical fractures reveal an undeniable truth. The currency of loyalty is the most powerful and the most perishable asset any state can possess. It must be minted with integrity and honored without fail, for when it is devalued, the entire empire built upon it begins to crumble from within. A soldier's personal history was not written on fragile parchment, but cast in bronze for eternity. These military diplomas, small two-leaf tablets discovered across the frontiers of the old Roman Empire, are our most direct window into the loyalty economy's final transaction. When an auxiliary soldier from Germania or Thrace completed his 25 years of service, he received one of these documents. It was his legal proof of an honorable discharge, and most importantly, the grant of Roman citizenship for himself, his children, and all future descendants. The text, meticulously inscribed, names the emperor who granted the privilege, the specific military unit, and the exact date. Holding one of these tablets is to hold a man's entire future, the moment his family's lineage was permanently altered. It is the ultimate receipt, stamped not by a clerk but by the Roman state itself. This official record is given a human face by the thousands of tombstones that line the old Roman roads. A typical inscription tells a story of a life in service. It might read, Gaius Valerius, soldier of the 2nd Legion Augusta, served 20 years, lived 45. He was awarded the Corona Muralis for being the first over the enemy wall. Here lies his wife and daughter. In just a few lines, we see his career length, the ultimate proof of his survival, the specific honor that elevated his status, and the family he was able to establish because of his legal rights. These stones are not just memorials, they are condensed biographies, personal testimonials to the system of rewards that motivated men to risk everything. For the day-to-day reality of army pay, we turn to the dry sands of Egypt, where papyri have survived for 2,000 years. A pay slip from a legionary fort records a deduction for boots, a tunic, and fodder for his animal, leaving him with a net salary. A letter home scribbled by a soldier named Appian reads, I thank the gods that I am in good health, and I make constant supplication for you. I received 3 gold pieces from the emperor as a donative. These fragile documents capture the mundane economics and the emotional undercurrents of military life. They show us the immediate spending of a cash bonus, the worry for a family left behind, and the continuous thread of hope that connected a soldier to his home. Even buried treasure speaks to this history. Hoards of coins found on the sites of military bases often tell a story of uncertainty. A pot of silver denarii hidden under a barracks floor and never recovered suggests a soldier who was saving his pay for the future, or perhaps hiding it before a battle he did not survive. A sudden, massive deposit of new coinage across multiple forts can correspond to a historical record of a new emperor paying a special loyalty bonus to the troops. The money itself becomes archaeological evidence, a silent witness to the promises made and kept, or sometimes to the desperation that came when those promises were broken. This tangible evidence, from bronze to bone-dry papyrus, moves the grand narrative of empires into the hands of the individual men who built them. Each artifact is a frozen moment in a soldier's long calculation of service and reward. The same psychological contract that bound a legionary to Rome still resonates in the rustle of a modern medal ribbon. The ancient currencies of loyalty never truly disappeared. They simply adapted to new eras and new uniforms. Consider the modern military medal, a small piece of metal suspended on a colored strip of cloth. It is the direct heir to the Roman corona civica, a tangible symbol of valor and service that transcends its monetary worth. It speaks a universal language of honor, granting its wearer a form of social capital that cash can never provide. This system of formal recognition, from a Purple Heart to a Silver Star, fulfills the same deep human need for esteem that drove a Roman soldier to risk his life to save a comrade. The legacy continues in the profound long-term investment in a soldier's future. The modern equivalent of a Roman land grant is not a plot of farmland, but the GI Bill. This revolutionary benefit provides veterans with education and housing assistance, offering a path to a prosperous civilian life. It is a direct investment in the soldier's human capital, mirroring the ancient promise of social mobility and future security. It answers the same fundamental question: what comes after the service? Just as a Roman veteran became a landowner, a modern veteran can become an engineer, a teacher, or a homeowner, their loyalty repaid with a foundation for a new life. The fierce pride of a modern military unit, its esprit de corps, is a powerful echo of the Roman legion's sacred spirit. The distinctive insignia, the unit patches, the shared traditions and history, all forge an identity as potent as that surrounding the legionary eagle. A soldier today does not fight for an abstract nation alone. He fights for the Marines, the paratroopers, or his specific battalion, bound by the same unbreakable camaraderie that defined ancient brotherhoods. Even the feudal system of the Middle Ages, where a knight pledged his sword in exchange for a fief, a grant of land, was a direct medieval translation of the ancient land for loyalty model. The knight became the local authority, the protector of that land, his personal stability tied directly to the stability of his lord's domain. This unbroken thread, running from the Roman colonia to the feudal manor to the modern V alone, reveals a timeless truth. The methods of compensation change, but the core human desires they address remain constant. Soldiers have always sought recognition for their sacrifices, security for their futures, and a profound sense of belonging to something greater than themselves. The most powerful loyalty currency has always been, and will always be, one that honors the whole person, not just the fighter. A chest of gold could not buy the loyalty that a simple bronze diploma guaranteed. The popular image of the ancient soldier as a mere mercenary, fighting only for the gleam of precious metal, is a dramatic oversimplification that collapses under the weight of historical evidence. While coins were absolutely essential for the day-to-day economy of a military camp, paying for everything from a new pair of sandals to a drink at a local tavern, they were the baseline, the foundational salary. Over a career spanning 25 years, This steady pay was often the least memorable part of the compensation package. What truly motivated a man to endure decades of hardship was not the jingle of coins in his purse today, but the profound, life-altering promises secured for his tomorrow. Think of the Roman soldier who enlisted as a foreign auxiliary. His sights were set on the citizenship document that would transform his children from outsiders into Romans. Consider the veteran whose ultimate reward was not a lump sum of cash, but the deed to a farm, a permanent stake in the empire he helped build. These were rewards that gold alone could never purchase. In fact, historical records from various periods indicate that soldiers sometimes actively resisted pay raises or reassignments if it meant sacrificing hard-earned privileges or being transferred away from a prestigious legion with a storied history. Their unit identity and their accrued social standing were forms of capital too valuable to trade for a few extra coins. The reality was a sophisticated and deeply personal bargain. A young recruit was not signing up for a simple job. He was entering into a long-term partnership with the state. His compensation was a carefully balanced portfolio, a mix of immediate cash, the tangible thrill of plunder, the profound security of land and pension, and the intangible yet priceless currency of honor and legal rights. This system was deliberately designed to foster not temporary enthusiasm but enduring loyalty. It created a professional soldier who was emotionally, financially, and socially invested in the long-term health of the empire he served. Dismantling the myth of the gold-hungry mercenary allows us to see the ancient soldier as he truly was, a complex individual making a rational calculation for his future, his family, and his place in history. A soldier's promise of land or citizenship was never meant for him alone. It was a legacy, a deliberate investment in the entire family line. When a Roman auxiliary received his bronze diploma, the grant of citizenship did not stop with him. It flowed downward to his children and outward to all his future descendants. In a single moment, his entire lineage was lifted from the status of foreigner to that of Roman citizen, with all the legal protections and social mobility that entailed. This transformed military service from a personal sacrifice into a dynastic strategy. A father's 25 years of hardship could buy his sons a birthright he himself had earned only through blood and decades of loyalty. This created a powerful intergenerational cycle where the son of a veteran, born a citizen, would himself see the army as a proven path to advancement, cementing military service as a family tradition. But the state's care for the family unit extended beyond these long-term legal transformations. There was also a powerful, immediate safety net. In the Roman legions, if a soldier fell in battle, his comrades would often take up a collection for his widow and children. There are records of burial clubs and formal arrangements where soldiers pooled their resources to ensure that a brother's family would not be cast into destitution by his death. This was more than charity. It was a vital form of social security that reassured every soldier that his ultimate sacrifice would not also be the ruin of those he left behind. Knowing his family would be cared for allowed him to fight with a clearer conscience and a more focused mind. The economic stability offered by a military career provided a foundation that most civilian families could only dream of. While a peasant farmer's income was at the mercy of drought, blight, or a landlord's whim, a soldier's stipendium was remarkably reliable. It arrived at regular intervals year after year, funded by the immense centralized treasury of the state. His family had access to the steady supply of goods flowing into the military camps, from quality food to sturdy clothing, often at stable, subsidized prices. This buffer against the famine and uncertainty that plagued the ancient world was a profound benefit in itself, and then there was the intangible currency of prestige. In a local village, the family of a legionary serving on the German frontier held a distinct status. Their son was not just a laborer, he was a representative of imperial power. This social capital could translate into better marriage prospects for his sisters, more favorable business dealings for his father, and a general deference from neighbors who knew the family had a direct connection to the might of Rome. The community saw them as a family with a future, their fortunes tied to the empire's success. By rewarding the soldier, the state was, in effect, rewarding his entire kinship network. It made his parents, his wife, and his children all stakeholders in the system. Their collective hope for a better life was pinned on his successful service and the empire's continued stability. Why would a community rebel against Rome when its most ambitious young men were actively being integrated into the Roman world, sending wealth and status back home? This comprehensive approach wove the military not just into the fabric of the state, but into the very heart of countless families, creating a bedrock of loyalty that was both personal and profoundly hereditary. That bronze diploma promising citizenship and land was a powerful tool of statecraft, but was it a genuine reward or a subtle form of control? This is the profound ethical question at the heart of the loyalty economy. On one hand, you could argue that by weaving a soldier's entire future into the fabric of military success, the state created a powerful dependency. His identity, his family's security, and his legacy were all held hostage to his continued service and the empire's favor. It was a system designed to make leaving nearly impossible, binding a man's fate so completely to the state that his personal freedom was the ultimate price of his compensation. Yet, from another angle, this was not manipulation but a remarkably fair social contract, especially in a world of limited opportunities. For a common farmer or a foreign tribesman, what other path offered such a clear route to land ownership, legal rights, and social mobility? The state received disciplined, long-serving soldiers willing to defend and expand its borders. In return, it offered these men a stake in the world they were building, a chance at a prosperity they could never have achieved on their own. This was not a one-sided extraction, it was a mutually beneficial exchange. The true differentiator between a system of honor and one of oppression was a simple, brutal metric: follow through. When the early Roman Empire reliably delivered on its promises of land and citizenship, it fostered a deep and genuine loyalty that lasted for centuries. Soldiers believed in the contract because the state consistently honored its signature, but when later empires or individual commanders began to renege, when pay was debased or pensions vanished, that trust shattered instantly. The result was not mere disappointment, but mutiny, civil war, and the eventual collapse of military cohesion. This timeless tension between incentive and control is not confined to history. It resonates in any structure where loyalty is exchanged for reward, from modern corporations to entire governments. The ethical line is drawn not by the promise itself, but by the integrity with which it is kept. A system that uplifts individuals while securing the collective can build something enduring. One that merely exploits, however, always sows the seeds of its own destruction. A feudal knight's 40 days of annual service stands in stark contrast to the Roman legionary's 25-year career. This difference reveals more than just a gap in time. It highlights a fundamental divergence in how societies organized military loyalty. The medieval knight received his fief, a grant of land, in a ceremony of homage, swearing a personal oath to his lord. On the surface, this mirrors the Roman veteran's land grant. Yet the underlying systems were worlds apart. The Roman model was centralized and bureaucratic, administered by a vast imperial state that processed discharges and pensions through official channels. The loyalty of a legionary was ultimately to the idea of Rome itself. The medieval system, however, was a decentralized web of personal bonds. A knight's primary allegiance was to his immediate lord, who himself might owe fealty to a higher noble, creating a chain of personal obligations that often fragmented larger kingdoms. The knight's service was not a full-time profession but a seasonal obligation, fitting the agricultural rhythms of a localized economy. His 40 days were often sufficient for local campaigns, but they posed a severe limitation for any sovereign attempting to wage a prolonged, distant war. A Roman general could plan a multi-year campaign in Britain knowing his legions were a permanent professional force. A medieval king often had to negotiate for more time from his vassals or hire mercenaries to fill the gap. The very identity of each warrior was forged from different metals. The legionary's pride was civic and legal, rooted in his unit's history and his eventual rights as a citizen. The knight's identity was bound by the chivalric code, a blend of martial prowess and Christian piety that emphasized personal honor and courtly behavior. One system produced a soldier of the state, the other a warrior of the Lord and the faith. This comparison shows us that the currency of loyalty was never a single coin. Its value and form were always a direct reflection of the society that minted it, shaped by its political structure, its economic foundations, and its deepest cultural values. The enduring principles, however, remained constant: the need to provide tangible security, to grant social honor, and to forge an identity worth fighting for. The roar of the Roman crowd was a form of currency, as tangible to a legionary as the coins in his purse. A triumphant general's parade through the sacred way was far more than a victory lap. It was a masterfully orchestrated piece of political theater that paid dividends to every soldier in the ranks. As the procession snaked through the streets, the legionaries marched past their own families and neighbors, bathed in adulation. The captured enemy leaders in chains, the wagons overflowing with glittering spoils, even the exotic animals, all served a single, powerful purpose: to make the army's success spectacularly visible to the people they protected. This public validation answered a deep human need for recognition, transforming anonymous service into a celebrated civic achievement. It was a clear message to every citizen and to the soldiers themselves that their sacrifices had directly enriched the state and secured its power. This ephemeral glory was then carved in stone for eternity. Monuments like Trajan's Column were not just decorative, they were permanent public records of service. A veteran could walk through the forum and point to the carved reliefs on an arch, showing his legion building a bridge or storming a fortress, and say to his son, "I was there." These structures, inscribed with the names of legions and the campaigns they won, were a perpetual honor roll etched into the very heart of the city, a constant reminder that the state valued and remembered their deeds. This monumental gratitude circulated in everyone's pockets too. Coins minted to commemorate a great victory, like those celebrating the conquest of Judea, carried images of captured prisoners and triumphant slogans across the empire. Every time a merchant used such a coin to buy grain or a farmer paid his taxes with it, he was inadvertently spreading the army's fame. The commander's glory became the army's glory, and that glory became common knowledge, reinforcing the soldier's elevated status in the eyes of society. This culture of celebration was reinforced by the words spoken directly to the men. Before a battle, a general would deliver a contillo, a rousing speech that reminded his troops of their shared identity, their past victories, and the sacred importance of their mission. After the victory, another speech would praise their valor and link their personal courage directly to Rome's destiny. This ritualistic oratory forged a powerful psychological bond, making each soldier feel like an essential actor in a grand historical drama. This comprehensive system of public acclaim wrapped the concrete rewards of land and cash in a glittering package of social prestige. It answered the question of what a soldier fights for with a resounding answer for the respect of his entire world. The enduring lesson from these ancient barracks and battlefields is not about wealth, but about human nature itself. Empires from Rome to Mongolia succeeded not because they paid their soldiers the most, but because they paid them in the most profound ways. They crafted compensation into a complete psychological package, one that promised a tangible future, a respected place in the community, and a legacy that would outlive the soldier himself. This was the masterstroke, transforming a simple transaction of service for coin into a deep, symbiotic partnership. The soldier's personal dreams for security and status became the very fuel for imperial expansion and stability. This intricate understanding of motivation still echoes in the structure of our modern world. The education benefits offered to veterans, the culture of honors and medals, and the powerful bonds of unit pride are all direct descendants of these ancient systems. They continue to answer the same fundamental human needs, so when you think about what inspires true dedication in any organization, look past the immediate salary. Consider the deeper currencies of purpose, belonging, and the chance to build something lasting, which ancient reward would have secured your